Tere hommikust, pärastlõunat või õhtut kõikidele armsatele eestlastele, kes meiega üle terve maailma ühinenud on täna. Me oleme alustamas juba oma 4. virtuaalfoorumit, mis on mõeldud kõikidele
which is meant for global Estonians across the world. I'm very happy that we are here today live in Postimees, in ERR, Estonian Public Broadcasting Company, and also in the Estonian world. There are many things we are planning to do today. We have 2 very interesting panel discussions, and we have some very interesting experts to talk to here. Next year in March, as you know, we are going to have the parliamentary elections of the Riigikogu. And our first topic, therefore, is covering this particular topic, how a foreign Estonian living abroad can participate. Then the second topic is about common information space. What are the trends when it comes to media consumption for global Estonians? But before we are going to move on to the first speaker, I would like to mention a few organizational issues, how we can participate. So for us, it is very important that you can be actively involved as much as possible. So we are using a WorksUp platform. So if you have participated in our events before, I'm sure you're quite familiar with this platform. So the same procedure as previous times. You will see our agenda. You can click on our speakers. You can see the background information about them. And you can find the questions there. We have prepared 2 polls for you about our 2 panels. So I would encourage you to participate in these polls, and we will be looking at the results later, and then our experts will have their opinions about it. It's on the right-hand side when you look at the WorksUp. But without further ado, I would like to welcome the first speaker, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Estonia, Mr. Urmas Reinsalu. Dear Estonians across the world, so welcome to the virtual forum of Estonians, which is held for the 4th time.
Ma soovin kõigile teile ilusaid ja rahulikke jõule.
Ükskõik millises maailma kliimavõtmistega
jõule vastu ei võta.
Where you are in the world.
Selle nädala alul käisin ma Kiievis.
Earlier this week I went to Kiev, and the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, extended the gratitude of all Ukrainian people to the Estonia as a government, Estonia as people, for this great support we have shown as Ukraine fights against the Russian aggression. Our survival as a state depends on the outcome of this war. So therefore, the least we can do in the interest of our own future generations is that we have to make sure Ukraine will win and Russia will lose. So I would call upon all of you to help Ukraine in its path to victory, regardless where you are. Talk to your politicians and demand more military aid for Ukraine. Support Ukraine in different initiatives and speak out in public. Even the smallest step is a step towards the victory of Ukraine and also for the continuation of our own freedom here in Estonia. So, all these small things we can all do, all these small droplets will run into the river of our common will. These moments, right now, are the decisive moments. Ukraine needs support for their energy system, and Ukraine needs weapons in order for them to last. So if you talk about the Estonian people across the world, it is very important to make sure that these old traditions of newspaper publishing will survive. So all these publications should survive, which we have had for decades everywhere in the world, and they will be still important for all these communities in these countries where Estonians are reading all these papers. What is also important is that the message and knowledge and information for common information space and common cultural space. To be an Estonian means you have a possibility to bring up our children in the Estonian language and with the Estonian mindset. So I hope that there will be lots of practical ideas we get from the discussions today. So one of the symbols of the vitality of Estonian mindset and that we're able to do new things is in Canada. There is a new Estonian Centre which has been supported by the Canadian government. And on behalf of Estonia, I extended our gratitude to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Canada. So next year in March, we're going to hold the parliamentary elections for Riigikogu, and I hope that all the Estonians across the world will participate. So this kind of discussion everybody holds with their own country, the willingness to have your say, is something which is actually put into practice. It's important as a feedback, and it's very important when I look at our expectations when it comes to the future of our country. Dear Estonians across the world, Estonia is going to be the loving mother. You can always come to us when you have a concern, and Estonia is going to welcome you always back. Estonia is supporting you. Estonian Republic, the Republic of Estonia, and our Minister of Foreign Affairs will be happy to help you in all the practical issues. So would it be a practical consular assistance? And also, if it comes to your ideas, how exactly we can foster our culture. You can always write to me. My email address is urmas.reinsalu@mfa.ee. So enjoy this conference, enjoy this beautiful Christmas time, and long live Estonians across the world. Long live freedom and long live the victory of Ukraine.
Nii, suured tänud meie välisministrile.
Thank you very much to the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the introductory speech. And now we are about to begin our first panel. As I mentioned before, the panel will be focusing on the issue of whether the votes and voices of Estonians count abroad. I'd like to pass the floor to Raud, who is a strategic consultant and a journalist. Second, I'd like to pass the floor to Peeter Püvi, who is the director of the consular office at the Estonian Embassy in Finland, and also Reet-Martin Seer will be joining us, who is a member of Estonia World Council and member of Estonian Central Council in Canada. They will be joining us in this panel, but before I continue with my questions, we will go abroad for a minute, where we posed a question to people. We asked, why is it important to participate in the elections for Riigikogu when you live abroad, and how do you decide who to vote for? Estonia is a valuable part of the world, like any other culture state. Even though we live outside of Estonia, we are also assessed and seen on the basis of the information that reaches them from Estonia. This affects our communication on a daily basis with other people. And of course, it matters to us what is taking place in Estonia. One of the most important ways we can affect it is by voting online or at the embassy. You might think it's just one vote, but if there are many votes, then they matter. And where do you get adequate information when you're far away? Quality media gives you an idea what people are thinking about Sirp, Müürileht, Edasi publications. I'm interested also in the information from the ministry. And when I think about who to vote for, then I think there are two criteria. One is the candidate should share my worldview, and secondly, they should have experience of how to make things happen in politics. Our small Estonia is a democratic state where it's the people who hold the highest power. The elections for Riigikogu determine who will be deciding over the future of Estonia, and for that reason it is important to shape Estonian future by participating in elections for Riigikogu also when you're living abroad. How do you choose who to vote for? Personally, I would recommend visiting all Estonian political parties' web pages and to read their programs. Also, you can fill in the voter compass, Valija Kompass, and to read interviews with the candidates. Finnish Estonian youth, Simo. Today I want to speak about why you should vote at the Riigikogu elections. You should vote at the elections because every vote actually does matter. It's your candidate who might lose their place because you did not vote. You should also go and vote because it's the only true possibility to affect the composition of Riigikogu and Estonian politics. It does matter who is amending the law. Even if you're not interested in politics or you cannot find a suitable candidate, you should still go and vote. Even if you don't put a name on the ballot, you still are sending a message by doing so. Thank you very much for the ideas that primarily came from Finland. Just to reflect, I also have traveled and lived abroad, and speaking about elections then, and just before we had an interesting conversation when I started thinking about whether I ever, since I became an adult, then have I been in Estonia during elections? I have not. I've always been abroad, and I've participated through our online election system, which was very important to me. I knew that one day I would come back home. But we also have very many people who were born abroad. So to begin with, a broader question to you. Do you feel that those born abroad or who have spent a longer period of time abroad, are they motivated to participate in shaping Estonian politics, or where would that motivation derive from? Well, this term, foreign Estonian, I think it's outdated. It's just geography. An Estonian is an Estonian wherever they live. And the fact that I participate, if I'm interested in the state, then I participate in the elections. I think it's basic. I'm old enough that I twice also participated in the elections during Soviet time. I can't remember who I voted for, but I've never missed an election once. I think everybody who has any emotional tie to their homeland in the modern age, 2022, where there's information tools, Estonia has been a leader in online elections. I think there's no question about it. You need to participate. Yes, definitely, you should participate in voting. And people have relatives and family members in Estonia. So maybe when you are abroad and it doesn't really pertain to you that much, then think about those who are close to you in Estonia. It does affect how they are doing. And now to Canada. Reet, why don't you tell us how long you've been in Canada for, and why has it been important for you to participate and contribute to what takes place in Estonia?
Rootsist, kui olin 16 kuud vana. Nii et terve eluaeg.
The speaker is not audible and cannot be interpreted.
Ja olen osalenud Eesti valimistel alates taasiseseisvumise ajast. ja minu lapsed on ka osalenud, kuid minnes selle küsimuse juurde tagasi, et kas meie hääl loeb, lühivastus siitpoolt vaadates on ei. Meil on tihti tunne, et meie hääl ei loe valimistes, meie hääl ei anna Eestisse ajakirjanduses, ei ole peegeldatud Eesti ajakirjanduses, ei ole nähtav telekas, ei ole kuuldav raadios, sest hääle tähendus on tõlgendus on suurem kui ainult valimistel hääle andmine. Ja vähemalt mitte veel. Hea algus on sellele antud selle üleilmiste eestluse tegevuskavaga, kuid nagu välisminister Urmas Reinsalu mainis.
As the Minister for Foreign Affairs said, the younger generations are problematic, especially those who have lived here for longer and who need information in English language. And they have different reasons to participate in the elections and who they also vote for. It reflects our worldview and our convictions here in Canada, and this I have heard from those representing other foreign countries as well. We can come back to this later, but that's my initial answer, and I don't want to be negative, but it is true that we don't count, and there are several reasons for it. Thank you, Reet, and I'd like to briefly come back to include our viewers as well. We have a poll prepared for you, so if you've joined us through WorksUp, then look at the right-hand corner and open the poll that asks a question from you. Do you feel that living abroad it is possible for you to shape the future of Estonia? And we already have received some responses, and right now we see that some have said that they use very different channels and tools to shape Estonian future. Only a few people have said that it doesn't matter to them at all. And in second place, we have people who participate via elections, but these percentages are fluctuating, so we'll come back to it. But back to the hall now, Raud and Peeter. Let's speak a little bit about what you think. The state where the person is living, the Estonian is living abroad, independent of how long they've lived there, does the political activity level of that state affect the how active the Estonians living there are in participating in politics? In Denmark, the Netherlands, the participation in elections rate is close to 90. In some other countries, it's very low to some extent. But again, I would come back to the same idea. If you are Estonian, you are interested in Estonia, then you vote. But of course, the overall mentality, if it's below 50% participation rate, then you maybe will go along with the general mass. But I don't think it's a serious factor. And well, does the voice of foreign Estonians count? It does. We need to look at the figures. With 37,000 votes, you can get your political party into parliament. And I think there are even more Estonian citizens abroad. So it is possible to get your own group into the parliament if you want to. Peter, a question to you. What do you think? What are the most important factors which influence whether a person participates in Estonian politics or not, based on your own experience? You have worked at the embassies of a number of different countries. Well, it depends also on how long the person has lived in the other country. Have they recently moved there 10, 15 years ago, or are we speaking about several generations? That affects the participation, and secondly, who they want to vote for, who is that candidate. When people have been away for longer, then they are maybe a bit more open to voting for all candidates, but if somebody has left for a specific reason, economic reasons, for example, then the vote might be a little bit of a protest vote. Before we go back to Canada, to Raud, a question to Raul. We know that in Lithuania yesterday there was an interesting discussion over dinner as well, that in Lithuania the system is that they have thought about the people living abroad, that they have their own candidates at the parliament elections. In Estonia, should we also have a circle of people meant for Estonians living abroad? I still think that probably not, because the numbers just don't add up. When the Lithuanians left during the Second World War, then it was a huge number of people who left. And since the numbers are remarkable, then there's reason for such a thing in Estonia. It's not the case. Our people went across the sea. Lithuanians left across land, so it was easier for them. What do you think? It probably will not pay off. Raud, did you want to reflect on this?
Ja, mul on siin paar asja,
Yes, I have a couple of things I would like to respond to.
Alustan siis selle viimase punktiga ja tulen
I
teiste
will
juurde tagasi.
start with the last item and come back to the others.
Valimisregistris ei ole
In the election registry, we don't have specific information.
Välisriikides hääletas 2001
We know that
2107 Eesti kodanikku.
2,107 people voted abroad.
250 000 hääletasid elektrooniliselt. Me ei tea, kui palju neid on välismaalt.
250,000 voted online. We don't know how many votes were cast abroad. And so we don't know how many actually voted who are abroad. And our votes are scattered. We had to elect on the basis of where our family live. So I vote in a different county than my brother, for example. So it depends on where our ancestors are from, and the different election districts have been discussed for years. Erik Niels-Kross has written about it as well, and our organizations are for this amendment. There should be about 87 to 88,000 Estonian citizens abroad. That's 2 districts. It does not require amending the constitution, only amending the Election Act, and the role model from the Lithuanians shows that this amendment has increased activity and participation in the elections, but in general, Lithuanians' interest in their homeland. So I believe that this would be an important change, and after 5th of March, I think this issue should be tackled immediately. Very convincing. But Grete, another question. It's the beginning of December, and we already see political advertisements on the streets, on TV. I've even found some interesting campaign leaflets in my mailbox. But in Canada, where do you get information regarding which candidates to vote for? Do the candidates target their campaigns to Estonians in Canada? No, I think they pay no attention to us. It's not just my opinion, it's the fact. The past 2 cycles of parliament elections in Canada, we have organized hybrid debates where all political parties have been represented with the chairman or the candidates, and they have all participated. And this has been in cooperation with public broadcasting and Postimees publication, and we're planning to do this time again. So in Stockholm on the 18th of February on site, and we will do it virtually in January. If we don't seek information actively, then nothing is accessible and available. I have family friends. I have a niece who understands Estonian and would like to participate in the elections. participates in social life, is in the folk dance group and choir, but her Estonian is not good enough to understand the platforms in Estonian. So if political parties were really interested in the 88,000 votes abroad, then they need to start thinking about this an overview in English of their platform.
Peetri juurde.
Coming back to Peter, you are working in our embassy in Helsinki, and we have the largest number of Estonian population in Finland. Raud gave us an example of Canada, but when it comes to Finland, do the Estonian politicians go there and meet with the local Estonians? So how does that look like? And perhaps you have examples of other countries as well. Yes, indeed. I'll come back to what Raud said for a moment. Because the same thing that if you're looking at these people there, then in election and you have to have compromises, because if you have to vote for a candidate, then you can't vote for the candidate, then you can vote for the party, because this is also something which helps. And now when it comes to voters abroad and how active they are, then we have about 200,000 living outside Estonia. We also know that people who are permanently living abroad, about 4,500 of them voted. So if we add tourists to this number, then we get a total of 15,000 people, which of course is quite a large number. But if Estonians abroad, if they would have their own election district, would they be more interested? Then it's harder to say. But regarding what is happening in Finland, then yes, indeed, Estonian political parties are quite active there. Some of them are more, some of them are less active. I know that in 2 weeks' time there is going to be an event held where there are some politicians meeting with the Estonians there, but this is not an embassy event, it's outside the embassy. So yes, indeed, if you want to participate, then you have this possibility. Let's go back to Raud and let's talk about politics a bit more. Do you have this kind of understanding of the Estonian political scene? If you look at the slogans of the political parties, what they are promising, or what the possibilities are, or what the problems might be for certain parties for the upcoming elections, because the times are really complicated. We don't even have to describe what has happened over the last few years and what the impact might have been. So what is your analysis when it comes to the upcoming elections? Yes, the world changed on February the 24th. The war started. And the war is not over yet. We will be feeling the aftermath for a long time to come. It will also influence our elections. But the situation in Estonia in general is that we have kind of like two streams of information which will not meet. And I think that we have never faced the elections with such clear-cut separate groups. And we also see very clear differences in communication. So maybe there's not much of a point to analyze all the steps taken or the slogans. But I think that in March we're going to vote for sort of a general direction. Are we going forward? Are we going back? Are we voting for East or West? Economy or safety or security? So what is interesting, in early December, where we do not even have the main points of the elections in place, because some of the parties say one thing, because they talk about the different difficulties in economy, talk about gas and electricity. The others are talking about security, Ukraine, and so forth. But the objective is to look at the number 51. And 51 means that if a certain group gets 51 votes, then this is pretty much an automatic when it comes to the coalition or the government formation. So any vote which comes from outside Estonia carries a lot of weight, because these figures are quite high, because right now we can see fairly well balanced situation, because there are quite few months to go until the election, so we'll see what happens. But when it comes to the promises and slogans, nobody ever lies as much as they do before the elections. So many promises are made. But one thing I would like to pay attention to is when it comes to big international strategies, then you should have always idealistic, not materialistic approach, because that's kind of like 1930 slogans from the US that you have $1,000 in every pocket and a big fat chicken in your pot, which is actually a true slogan. But this is not something which should really happen. And EKRE party wants to save Estonia, but this is not from Russia, but saving Estonia from the Reform Party, and also some other slogans, as we can see. So I would use two of my favorite slogans. One is vote with your heart, and the other one, vote or you will lose. These are my favorite slogans, although from other countries, not from Estonia. Brief, but to the point. Very good. I'll go back to Canada now. And Raud, you raised your hand. I have a question for you as well. So perhaps you can reflect a little bit of what your understanding is when it comes to the Estonian politics in Canada, because if you look at the opinions of Estonians living abroad, because our government and the Prime Minister has been present in international media, CNN and BBC. We can see our Prime Minister or the President talking. So what is the general understanding in Canada today? If I may, I'll answer then later to the comment by Raul, but I'll start with your question. Because we have a very positive attitude when it comes to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the work done by this government. Because this government is defending the same values, and their value reflects our values as well. The biggest danger is the war, first of all. I will repeat what the Minister of Foreign Affairs said, that Ukraine has to win and Russia needs to lose. Because we know that the international democratic order is in danger. We have tried to amplify our own voice here as well, because Kaja Kallas has been able to speak amongst other leaders on the Canadian TV, and thanks to Markus Kolga, who is in the next panel and who has a very good communication and good relations with our government here. And at the same time, Russia was blacklisted, and Russia fell under sanctions organized by our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, so we're very proud of that. So we do this work as well. When it comes to the current government, then we have a very good attitude towards them. If you were to ask younger people, what are their concerns? What are they worried about? It's two things. First of all, the war and the threat it might pose not only to Estonia, especially if a nuclear weapon is used, because this is not perhaps so close to us, but we're still worried about the outcome. And then another thing they're worried about is the rise of extreme right of Estonia. And there's a party which might be harmful to the democratic order, which is similar to the Ukrainian government, Hungarian government, for example. So this is an issue. And what Raul Rebane said, because what happens in the Estonian politics is reflected across the world. If we think about maybe not so much about Canada, but because we are keeping an eye on the United States as well, what they news are saying and what the opinion shows are saying, then United States, I know, is split down in the middle. And this is something which we can see if we talk to our compatriots in America, then we can see that we know that the Trump's party is not the party it used to be under Reagan. We can see the American Estonians are sometimes also EKRE supporters. So the people who are supporting Trump have the same worldview. So we know that there are connections, and this is the ties which they have across the world. So these are our concerns here as well, and I believe that they are reflected also in the Estonian politics. Thank you very much, Raud. And before we move on to the next question, then let us look at the poll. So the poll results, the question was that do you feel that if you live abroad, do you have a possibility to shape Estonian future? And looks like that our answers are pretty much balanced. We can see the people are still answering. What is being said that I also use other methods in order to, in addition to elections, to have an impact on the Estonian future. Let's look at the responses. If we talk about the elections and people participate through the elections, but what are the other ways that people can influence the future of Estonia living abroad? Would it be supporting our companies, promoting Estonia abroad? So what are the ways that our compatriots abroad can help us? So one of the possibilities would be the organizations of Estonians, which we have across the world. So because you have your friends, other compatriots abroad, and you will find ways how you can have your say and make your voice heard. So this is true for Estonia, and also it makes Estonia visible in other countries as well. So this is one of the possibilities. Raud? There is nothing more valuable than somebody who is proud of their home, because they become an advertising agent. So this is very important. People tend to think that important information is traveling through newspapers and internet, but that's not true, because emotional information, which is important and actually has an impact, is it comes across ceremonies, rituals, face-to-face meetings. So that means that if Estonian communities abroad maintain our rituals or celebrate our holidays, which they do very actively. So if this is ongoing, then this is a big help for our psyche and for us being us. Let's go back to Canada. Raud, perhaps you can tell us a little bit what are your ways and what have you seen has the best impact for having your say in the Estonian politics? I would start with where Raud left off. And maybe a little bit of a background information as well, because rituals are really very important, because Estonians abroad. So when our grandparents or parents came to Canada or moved to other countries across the world, then we were speaking for Estonia during the period of occupation for 50 years. We all know that, but at the same time, we were maintaining these rituals. We were keeping the traditions alive. So we built our churches. We started with folk dancing groups. We had Estonian cooking courses. We have the traditions. We eat rosolje. We eat the black pudding, verivorst. So even the people who don't speak Estonian anymore eat the same foods. So Estonian voice is carried by the chair of the Estonian World Council. So this is also about the security information. We promote Estonia when we stand with the Ukrainian community. We donated $500,000 Canadian for the Ukrainian refugees in Estonia. Then Estonians abroad, also the Estonians who were already born in other countries, and their experiences have reached Estonia. For example, Riina Kionga, Külliki Sillaste, Daniel Sheram, Mariann Kelam, the book, and President Ilves, so many other people who were born somewhere else and who came back to Estonia. And I believe that in addition to the Estonian culture, the most important thing is that we are the guarantee of the security of Estonia, although Estonia is a member of NATO and has acceded to the European Union. In 1995, when the Central and Eastern European Council was founded, where Estonia is a member here in Canada, so this is 4.5 million people. So we organized this with the leadership of Estonians because Estonia wanted to become a member of the NATO. So we organized a huge NATO conference in Canada with Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. So this was the question of our accession. This was something we should discuss there. And these are the things we've done throughout the history, but we need to have closer connections. So it'll be more on an official level. Yes, we are known, but often the connection is not directly to Estonia. But what we can do with our governments on each level, it can be quite significant because we are the soft power of Estonia.
I do agree with you that you are the soft power of Estonia. But before I come back to our experts on stage, another question to you, Raud. You briefly talked about it. What has been the impact of the war in Ukraine on how much Estonians want to speak along? We never want to be in the situation that Ukraine is in right now. Well, yes, of course. It's one of the primary reasons why there is more interest in Estonian welfare and security. And for example, when the Toronto City Hall saw the first big demonstration for Ukraine, then I'd say that 60 to 70% of Toronto Estonians were there with Estonian flags. We have spoken with Ukrainians at similar events. Margus Kolga is the president of the organization I mentioned before. And he's like an honorary Ukrainian already, so we do what we can to support the Ukrainian community. I think there are 1.5 million of them in Canada, so more than the total population of Estonia. It does motivate people, and we are concerned. We are keeping an eye on it, and if there were any danger, we would do everything possible from our side. Thank you. I like panels that provide take-along messages, and there are Estonians listening to us across the globe. Then I'd like to start with Peeter. Why don't you reflect to Estonians what can they do to prepare for the upcoming elections? Well, first thing is to collect information from official sources of information. For example, valimised.ee webpage, which describes exactly how the elections take place, what are the deadlines. But what you can do immediately is that if you're living abroad, that the Ministry of Interior will be sending an information brochure to your email address by the 4th of January. You might not receive it because maybe you have not tied your regular email to the eesti.ee email. So you can go and check your email registration at the portal eesti.ee. If you want to vote, then there are 3 possibilities. First is by mail, electronically, and to go to the embassy. I don't know whether I should speak about the deadlines as well. Yes. We will also record today's seminar, so it'd be good to know what the deadlines are. So I have a piece of paper with some figures. So if you want to vote by mail, then the foreign representation must receive your application by the 3rd of February. At the embassy, it's possible to vote on 2 days. So between 18th and 23rd of February. So check the foreign representation of your location. What are the specific dates that they have prescribed? And most convenient way to vote is, of course, electronically, which is open from the 27th of February up until the 4th of March. So that is possible 24/7, and you can vote from 9 a.m. on the 27th until 8 p.m. on the 4th of March. Raud, you wear many different hats, but one of your tasks is that of a strategic advisor. What would you recommend to Estonian political parties? How to speak to those Estonians who live abroad, who have lived abroad long-term or only for a couple of years for their studies? What is the best way to reach them? Well, if you want votes, start talking. It's basic, it's childlike. Read said, compose text in English. 80,000 people. That's a huge resource. And at the previous elections, the Reform Party won with 160,000 votes. And I said you can get into the parliament, the Riigikogu, with 35,000 votes or 37,000 votes. So it's a task for the political parties, but also Estonian society. I would like us to be as intertwined as possible. What's the difference in the modern age, whether I live in Italy or I live in Estonia? If I am spiritually connected to Estonia and I'm proud of the country and I have internet, then what's the issue? With these elections, what might be very interesting, and with the demographic situation in Estonia, maybe I am unveiling a secret, but I have a feeling that these elections will be decided with women's votes. When we look at statistics, then, well, many think that we have this age group, women over 60. I think there are 220,000 of them, many fewer men. And Estonian women have a much higher education level than men in all age groups. So it's not only an ideological struggle, it's economic issues, backward or forward. It's about gender, age, and education will also be very important. So this is the understanding of the world in general. It's going to be very interesting. Reet, back to you. As a highly educated woman living in Canada, could you tell us about what the Estonians living abroad can do themselves to encourage other Estonians to speak up and participate in the upcoming elections? I think that one thing which is difficult to understand is that we have our own Estonian villages abroad. We have our own lives, our jobs, and the work that we do here for Estonia is all voluntary. We are not paid for it. Our organizations, trainings, hobby groups have it's all on voluntary basis. People have been doing this work for decades, and it's incredible what our parents and grandparents did with all this work, plus studying languages. So what I want to say is that we don't have very much time to think about it. When we have 5 hours a week, which we dedicate to teaching at the kindergarten, then where would we take that time? We have families. So the elections, to a certain extent, are in the background for very many people who otherwise are active in the community. But what I believe has helped a lot is the action plan of the Estonian World Council that was completed last year and is now being implemented. And I would like to thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Urmas Reinsalu, who started it 4 years ago when we had the Estonian World Council meeting in Tallinn, and at his initiative this thing started, and now we have a special ambassador, advisors, and we are creating a common information space. So getting support to our daily work here is important for us. But those who are going to go and vote, I just wanted to say I lost my train of thought. We always have some also have some obstacles here. Many older people who would vote, and like Raud said, it's very important as each vote counts, especially in the contemporary age, then we no longer can vote at the consulary offices. We have to go to the embassies. In Ottawa, there are very few Estonians. In Washington, very few Estonians. So we need to help those who are not able to vote electronically, the older generation, so that they could participate as well. And as to the gender issue, I believe those who are voting for the more progressive politicians and parties who reflect the Canadian values more are also women with higher education level. So I believe that the people whose education level is a bit lower, and mostly men, the data shows that not only in Estonia but also elsewhere in the US, elsewhere, they have voted more for the extreme right-wing political parties. Thank you, Reet. We have spoken quite a lot about motivation, but in the beginning I also posed a question that I would like to come back to. When we speak about Estonians who have basically decided that they will never return to Estonia, that they will make their life somewhere else, then what is their greatest motivator? Might it be that they still have family members living here? Or when I say that I'm from Estonia, then I can really feel proud of that country. I have had some acquaintances who have lived abroad for more than 50 years. Despite the fact that they are somewhere else, their soul is in Võru or island of Muhu, or one of my friends' spirit and soul is in Nursipalu. I believe that childhood and also the memories of ancestors never disappear. The motivation is Estonia. And when you lose that, then we can't do anything about it. Then you are different. So I think Estonia's objective should be to make sure that as many people as possible have that connection with their place of home, then they will vote and all that. Peeter, some final thoughts on what that motivation might be? As I said at the beginning, it's a sense of home, this connection with Estonia, your family members, friends, and maybe your children will want to go back to Estonia. So through the elections, you can give them the opportunity for Estonia to be a better place. And like Raud said, the older people who are not so mobile, that this possibility to vote by mail exists as well. This is also one option. I have heard this nice sentence that life is how we imagine the lives of our great-grandchildren. So maybe it's a couple of generations down that this interest is spiked, and we should make sure that they have the opportunity to return if they want to. Raud, final words from you.
Motivatsiooniks on
The motivation is the continuation of a free Estonia, and Estonia would be a nice place to visit and a great place to live if we want to return. And also for the Estonian state to develop. It takes a long time. It's not an accusation, but it takes a long time to reach the point where we are regarding gender equality, women's rights, etc. It's a journey, and we hope, as we just heard put very nicely, this journey will be handed down to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Thank you, Raud, and I wish you a wonderful day because it's still early morning in Canada. And thank you to Peeter and Raul for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. And to Estonians listening to us anywhere in the world, I do encourage you to find out more about what is taking place on the Estonian political landscape and to participate and speak up in our politics, which you can do at the Riigikogu elections taking place in March. And this is the end of our first panel discussion. Thank you.
Nii, enne kui me kuulame esimest muusikalist etteastet, mul on väga hea meel.
Before we listen to the first musical performance, I have Puuluup up on stage, and you just finished your world tour, and I'd be very happy for you to share your initial impressions of contacts with Estonians abroad, and which countries did you visit?
Yes, indeed, we have been to many countries, and I'm really happy to see that so many of these countries have Estonians. They're very helpful, very friendly. So I would like to thank all the Estonians who came into contact abroad. So what was your most colorful experience? In which country you had the most helpful Estonians during that period when you were touring? We came into contact with Estonians in Canada, in the United States, and in Portugal, in Finland, and in Taiwan. But I believe that it was really amazing to go and stay with the Estonians for a couple of days in Canada and the West Coast, and but also in the on the east side, we ended up with some Estonians who were very interested in music. They were very educational. They showed us their instruments and techniques. During the next panel, we'll talk about the Estonians who will get the information about Estonia. But can you tell me, how did you find the Estonians who live abroad who were helping you there? We had the contacts already before we left. In some places, the social media would help us. And when we are touring, then we try to find contacts with the local Estonians as well. So if there are more of them, we try to perform for them already personally. And in New York, we were performing in the Estonian house. Through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have received contacts with it was been our embassy in Portugal and also our embassy in Lithuania. And what do you think, which country has your biggest fans? Not only Estonians, but where you've had the most interesting concerts? We have been going to Canada most often, actually, but fans, we know that the fans have been excellent everywhere. At the same time, it's interesting to see how different Estonians can be depending on when they left and what is their background. So all the backgrounds and all the stories are very interesting. It's good to hear, and thank you for this chat. And now we'll be listening to the first song by Puuluup.
Suusalumi saadas õhtust hommikuni, saadas kinni suusaraja, uus on sisse sõitama ja suusalumi saadas õhtust hommikuni, saadas kinni suusataja, nüüd on lahti kõik. Suusalumi saadas õhtust hommikuni, saadas kinni suusaraja, uus on sisse sõitama ja suusalumi saadas õhtust hommikuni, saadas kinni suusataja, nüüd on lahti kõik. Tahtsid minna turule, sõid, külla minna Tõnule, kuid Tõnu ammu siin keegi pole näinud, ta ei ega koolis pole käinud. Lähen poodi, vara veel, pole toodud kala veel, kui igname näppelinnan, bestanene, den augenblicken verleiden in het finale. suusalumi, saadas õhtust hommikuni, saadas kinni suusaraja. Uus on sisse sõitama ja suusalumi, suusalumi, saadas õhtust hommikuni, saadas kinni suusata. Nüüd on lahti kõik. Suusalumi, suusalumi, saadas õhtust hommikuni, saadas kinni suusaraja. Uus on sisse sõitama ja suusalumi, suusalumi, saadas õhtust hommikuni, saadas kinni suusataja. Nüüd on lahti kõik.
Ligi 200 000 eestlast elavad väljaspool Eesti riigipiire, muutes sellega Eesti.
We have Estonians living abroad, which makes Estonia much larger than we actually are. We all have connections to Estonia. Would it be the memories of the childhood, some Estonian tastes, some work or family? GlobalEstonian.com is our home in the internet, where all the Estonians and friends of Estonia across the world are welcome. You can learn, you can teach Estonian, you're a student, and you can need information for study grants or scholarships, or you want to find contacts with the other young people in Estonia. You want to find other Estonian communities in the rest of the world. Or you want to join with the business connection with Global Estonians. GlobalEstonian.com offers information so that everybody can find their own Estonia. Come and find your own Estonia. GlobalEstonian.com.
Nii, tänud meie siis esinejale Puuluupile.
I would like to thank Puuluup. And now we are introducing the second panel, and this is titled as a common information space, dream or possibility. So here in this panel we have Markus Kolga, who is a Canadian journalist and politician, Sirle Sööt, chair of the Swedish Estonians, and Ulle Toode, who is also a journalist, communication lecturer, and the founder and the chair of the Italian Estonian Association. So before we will continue with the panel, we will have some information from Estonians living abroad when we asked what are the channels which give you information about Estonia and what kind of information you're lacking. It's been 30 years, 25 years I've been in Rotterdam. So all sort of Estonian exchange, participation in events, organizing events. This is something what has been very important for the local Estonians ever since the beginning. I have actively participated in the founding of a Dutch Estonian house, organizing all sorts of events, and I think it's really good to notice that Estonians have this growing need to communicate with each other, to maintain our language or culture, and to introduce it for the local people. Main channels of information have been social media, so all sorts of Facebook groups. It's very important to communicate with each other, talking to the embassy, looking at the various websites, but especially two above mentioned were of great importance. I would like to recognize the Minister of Foreign Affairs that we have the Global Estonians website, where it's possible to find information and see what happens in Estonian community across the world. I have been involved in many of the global projects myself, for example, the Estonian schools, celebrating the Estonian Language Day, and My People Web, Minu Inimesed. So, of course, there is a need to find each other, to share the information. So we have seen this organic growth of wide information space, which is aimed for connecting all of us. It's been a great achievement. And right now, I think we should have more event calendars. It should be used more. And also when it comes to the community-based information in the countries near us, because these cultural events of great interest for many of us. And I believe that this information space of the website should be introduced more. It should be more integrated. and the use should be as normal as it is using Google or Wikipedia. And as I'm here, I would like to say that I would like to thank the Republic of Estonia for the confidence and understanding that every single Estonia is part of Estonia elsewhere, regardless where you are. So everything starts on a personal level and then grows from there. And this kind of recognition is very important because that means that we can introduce our culture in wherever we live, organizing our events, using our own possibilities to promote Estonia. We have had a lot of a good experience where Estonian National Kitchen in Rotterdam, or there was a mini song festival in Amsterdam, which starts from somebody's own personal interest with a funny food, funny name, or there's a question about the patterns of our dresses. So this has been something which has been causing a lot of excitement, and this kind of energy is going to support us for a long time to come. Thank you. And before I will start asking questions from the members of the panel, there's another poll. I would like to remind you once again, this is on Works Up on the right-hand side. And I asked this question, that which are the channels which give you an overview on what is happening in Estonia: social media, friends and family, Estonian local media, reading foreign media, or you're not really keeping an eye on what is happening in Estonia. We can see the responses already, and I'm happy to see that the most popular option is reading Estonian local media. So Delfi, ERR, Postimees, so they have some information in English as well about news in Estonia. Not all, but more perhaps the most important ones, which concern also Estonians abroad. But perhaps we'll go to the first question. So why do you think it's important that the Estonians abroad are in the same common shared information space? I think it is definitely important because the way I see it is from the angle of the sort of geopolitical view. Because right now, we have seen over the last 10 months during the war, it is really important that the Ukrainian community across the world is supporting each other using media and cooperating. In Canada, Ukrainian community has supporting Ukraine a great deal. They've been putting pressure on government to send weapons and financial aid to Ukraine so Ukraine can protect itself. And looking at how efficient they have been, then perhaps we should really use them as an example, because Estonia should also be equally prepared, and that means we want to use media and information space that will be united and information would spread so we can do our work efficiently when it comes to a crisis situation. So maybe I'll clarify that we have so many journalists who are here in the studio with us today. Then the Minister of Foreign Affairs has organized a couple of days of an inspiration trip for the journalists of Estonian diaspora, which covers Estonia from other countries. And we are very happy that they can be here on the stage with us. But now if we talk about Sweden, Sirla, perhaps you can discuss it in a bit more detail. Why do you think it's important? And do you have this kind of sense that the Estonians living in Sweden share the common Estonian information space? So my experience from Sweden, I've had 20 years of experience. I moved there 20 years ago and discovered this foreign Estonian world for myself. So we had our refugee community in Sweden. And what I have noticed is that all these years they have had a great sense of community there. So I can see how all the children of the refugees, they have actually two identities, which is perfectly normal. That on any given day, you read Estonian news, you read Swedish news, So you have two identities. You are in parallel a member of two societies. You know what the politics, everyday issues and culture. I would say that this is rather strange that you have Estonians who are moving abroad would restrict themselves and they only are interested in the information of the country where they live in, or only the work-related stuff. So I would say that if you are in another country, it will enrich you, because if you, of course, it's important to integrate to your host country, but at the same time, it's much better if you keep close community ties with your home country as well. As Raud said, we are all proud of our origin of a small Värsti village and Viljandi county. So I'm always happy to spread information about events which are held in a small village. So that means that I'm a citizen diplomat myself, so I would not really imagine my life that I only focus on Sweden, because that would really limit myself. Do you think you get a wider view of the society? You can compare how events are covered by Swedish media and then look at the Estonian media. Because you are a journalist yourself, but how do you feel that there is a comparison? Well, I'm not really a journalist, but I'm a lawyer, because I'm part of the Estonian journalism in Sweden, so the Rahvuslik Kontakt is this is part of my hobby, this newspaper. But I'm really happy that Estonian public broadcasting company is seeking out contacts with Estonians abroad, and they ask for comments if they see some sort of a news in Sweden. They said that we're going to get rid of the Minister of Environment, so they ask what we think about it. And as Estonians, we're able to interpret this problem as for Estonians, because as Estonians, we are able to do that. And I believe that public broadcasting companies should have more of these contacts across the world, and they should request for comments. You live in one of my favorite cities, in Rome, in Italy. Estonians living in Italy, for example, what kind of information channels do they use in order to get information about the diaspora and what is happening in Estonia? I believe that, as the poll results have shown us, most of it has to do with social media, or you get information through your friends. In the Italian Estonian Association, we have our own monthly newsletter. So the embassy does a lot of good work, but perhaps we do not have sort of focal, coordinated center where we'll have the information gathered, where we can have a better overview. But currently, if you think about the Estonian community, then it's different than it would be in Canada and Sweden, because we have people from Estonia who have left during the Second World War. But for us, we are talking about the community of Estonians who've gone to Italy during the re-independence. So when people went there, they were not really seeking each other out, but unfortunately, in a way, it can be somewhat positive that the events in Ukraine and this kind of international situation has helped to unite our community in Facebook, in social media. We are using WhatsApp a lot. We have a WhatsApp group. So people discuss this themselves, that what kind of image or what kind of message is important right now, because we are all, we feel that we are very much opposing the situation, that a lot of this information can be dominated by sort of Russian propaganda. We know that Russian propaganda is very forceful. Markus, coming back to you, do you feel that the people in Estonia are aware of our diaspora abroad, or what kind of mutual synergy you could have? So would it be more extensive, and what do you think was the easiest way to achieve that? I think that over the last 20 years, we have not had so much extra information from Estonia, but thanks to our local newspapers in Canada, in the United States, in Sweden, in Australia, this information was available online, but it was not covered by Estonian media. Estonian Public Broadcasting Company has been more active, having an English language portal, and we have Global Estonian reports as well. So hopefully this is one way to get this information across. And people in other countries can be proud of what we have achieved over the last few decades across the world with our communities. In Toronto, we have an Estonian house, we have churches in Sweden, Australia, across the world. So I think it would be really good. And we continue this work because we want to make sure that Estonian identity, culture and languages survive across the world. And if we were to have more information in the Estonian media, it'll be positive because, as I said, we can be really proud of that.
Global Estonian.
You spoke a little bit about the Global Estonian webpage. Actually, it has not been established to compete with any diaspora publication, Estonian Word or Estonian media. The idea was to collect information and references, thinking of all the Estonians abroad. And you can get information about the financial support for learning Estonian or support to participate in cultural events. This question is for the three of you. Do you feel that this webpage fulfills the initial goal? I will get started on this. I think it's a great outcome, and I'm very grateful that such an online environment has been established. A slight issue for us is that the second generation Estonians don't even always speak English, so the news should be translated to Italian, which means a lot of work, but it's very grateful. I'm very grateful that such an environment has been created. Yes, Markus and I have been working on it for a long time, and we're very happy that the Minister of Culture decided to support us, and now it is under INSA, but actually it depends on the communities how well it will work, and the INSA employee who works on this cannot decide very much. We have advertised that such a thing exists. For example, in Sweden, we have organizations, 36 organizations. All organizations are interested in being visible, including the media, all publications, internet portals of Estonians abroad. We want to be visible, we want to be found. And that means it's our responsibility to make sure that all data is updated, because if we have outdated data in a one-stop shop, then people will be disappointed and will not return. We need to raise the bar and make sure that once a month or once a year at least, all information is updated. Exactly. The original principle for Global Estonia was to understand where we are globally. What are Estonians doing? It doesn't compete at all with our media because it's not a magazine or journal. It's meant to support the other publications. I live in Toronto. I read our local paper, Eesti Elu, and Estonian World Review. But the fact that I'm living in Toronto means that I maybe don't go to Vaba Eesti Sõna webpage or Australian or Swedish publication. And Global Estonia was meant to take the headlines from their web pages so that I, living in Toronto, see what the Americans are, what they are doing in America, what are they doing in Australia and elsewhere. So I click on the links, and this brings more readers to the other publications. So it's meant to support them, and it's meant to amplify the message and our message overall. And the second principle was to give an opportunity to smaller communities where they cannot build their own webpage, so that they would have an online space where they can be found. When I go to Tokyo and there are some Estonians there who have a small folk dance group, I would find them. That's the idea of Global Estonian. And I think it takes some work to accomplish that aim, but due to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Culture, it seems that things are moving in the right direction. Another question to you, Markus. So how is what takes place in Estonia reflected in the foreign publications? In the previous panel, we spoke about political coverage of Estonian politicians, and a lot of our success stories, taxation system, and favorable business environment, and digital cyber topics are widely covered. What do you think? Does Estonia get covered often in Canada, or what is the balance there? Well, when journalists come to Estonia, then of course there is coverage. And Bronze Soldier in 2007, that made Estonia the leader in cybersecurity globally, and that is mentioned. But over the past 10 months of war, Estonia's reputation really has improved. When I go to Ottawa, I speak to our ministers, parliament members. I often hear that your prime minister, she's a real world leader, and it's women who are leading the world. And I believe that because of Kaja Kallas and her positions, I think Estonia's reputation has never been as good. In Canada, we protect freedom, democracy, and our contribution to Ukraine and the community of 1.5 million, they're always very grateful. They always thank Estonia at their public events for Estonia's contribution. They don't forget it for a minute, and I think currently Estonia is covered very positively and quite frequently in our media. Ülle, how often do you read about what takes place in Estonia in Italian publications? Are Estonian spokespeople covered? Recently, quite a lot has been written about our sex stories in digital sector, and also about our success story of restoration of independence in the context of Ukraine. But there's also this interesting point that sometimes, especially at the beginning, after the outbreak of the conflict, we were put in the same camp with Ukraine, and it was very important to always explain that we are in NATO, we are in the EU, we are in a completely different situation. But this Eastern European or former Soviet Union republic image returned for all Baltic states. And right now it's very important to catch the attention of journalists. In recent years, also during COVID, online though, and prior to that and post-COVID, we have involved the media through cultural events. We have included local municipalities, honorary consuls who have very good contact with journalists themselves. And we have received quite a lot of positive coverage, and we want to show that Estonia too is a cool country, so we can take that message to the media, to the mainstream media as well. And I think right now it's extremely important. Now back to Sweden. you are the one who is the editor-in-chief of the publication there, and we have photos here of the diaspora media publications. So what is their role in the present and in the future? We have a number of publications that after World War II were established that have been closed down and new ones have been created. So considering social media is taking over, and based on the responses, we also saw that a lot of people get information from social media portals. So what is their role? I am the Rahvuslik Kontakt was established in 1957. I'm definitely not the founder. And the bigger publications that are still published, let's take the bigger ones. When we look at subscribers, then Eesti Elu in Canada, which is the biggest right now, then Eesti Vaba Sõna in the US. What's next? Eesti Rada in Germany, which is published 6 times a year. Peterburi Teataja, which is contraband in Russia right now. Did I forget anybody? Anyhow, the point is that Rahvuslik Kontakt, when it was established in 1957, it was completely different from what it is now. So we need to develop with time. We need to shape our media publications to fit the readers, the subscribers. So now we have bilingual publication. We have Estonian and Swedish articles. We cannot use English language ones. We always need to look at our own community. What is our community like? Speak to the youth, to the elderly. Yesterday, when we discussed with all the editors-in-chief, then what was outlined was that not everybody uses the internet. We need to accept that elderly people, it's not really about age, but this tradition of having Vaba Eesti Sõna, Rahvuslik Kontakt, Eesti Elu on your coffee table. That is a tradition. And it was also stated that even when the grandparents pass away, then the descendants will take over this subscription. They have this personal relationship with this publication. And yesterday in the discussion, it was also outlined that currently we have online versions that support the print paper. You cannot have just the print paper. And you cannot really have just the online environment. They support each other. Social media helps in reaching different target groups. So I believe that this is a very interesting era that we're living in, but we all need to look at our own community. We have very different communities. We have different needs. I agree. We have time for a couple of questions from the hall. There are a number of journalists currently in Estonia who cover Estonia as they're here and when they go back home. Would anybody like to ask a question from the audience? Silver. Thank you. Silver Tambur, from the founder of Estonian World, editor-in-chief. I have a practical question. How to make sure that the voice of the diaspora would be heard louder in Estonian society on practical level and also in opinions. So when we say that you are an Estonian wherever you live, and when the Estonians are not physically present here, then how can they contribute more to life in Estonia, because we need more brain power here. Sileo mentioned that the public broadcasting agency asks the opinions of Estonians who are living abroad, but they want the Estonians' opinions on what is taking place in the foreign country, not so much about what they think about Estonia or how Estonia is doing or how to improve things here. I have been away from Estonia for 14 years, and you are currently living abroad. So we know that when you live abroad, you have completely different perspective. And now for 8 years, I've lived in Estonia, and I see that the point of view of diaspora Estonians is necessary, much more than we currently have it. Who wants to answer these questions? I can comment. I also have felt that I see the morning program, the Revision is calling, then I think, okay, what topic do they want to know about today? Actually, I would like to tell them about the wonderful things we do for hours on end, what we're planning to do, how during the pandemic we're able to bring all our activities online. Nobody cared. They only cared about what is taking place in Swedish society, and they couldn't understand that they needed an interpreter or a translator. What is all this about burning the Quran? And this radio program on Vikerraadio was closed, Hääle Ringvaade, which gave the possibility to introduce what is taking place abroad. I don't know why they stopped it, but I think it's very important to show Estonians living abroad in the same way as we highlight regions of Estonia. We are sort of islands. I think that with our society, we have tried to organize win-win events where we involve and include very interesting musicians, artists, scientists from Estonia, and maybe also high-level civil servants. And then it's in both countries, both in Italy and in Estonia. And then it's easier to get media coverage. And then the voice of Estonians abroad would travel differently. Now, see, they did something very interesting. So to make an event where we cover both sides.
Thank you very much, Silver, for your work with the Estonian world, that we have all the Estonian news in English. It's very good, especially for us in Canada. So we would have this source, so thank you. Of course, I have answered this kind of questions before, that we should really be heard more, that or what we do should be covered more in Estonian media. And we have these resources in Canada. We have very good journalists for Eesti Elu, Lars Liivat, who has written for years very good opinion stories, especially now during the war. This kind of information and this kind of article should be published here in Estonia as well. Liina Kindlam, who is also here, for years she has been writing of what we do. So maybe she could be a radio host or write weekly of what we do. So the resources are there, but we have to see this willingness from Estonia as well to use this kind of resources. So if this is done, then I believe that people would know more about things we do, and I think we'll have a strong identity across the world. We have time to take one more question from the audience. Tauno Mulder, Estonian World News. I have a question, maybe from Sirle. So, as you represent Rahvuslik Kontakt paper, what could Estonian government do and support, how we can support the publications abroad, because they do quite a bit, but what else could they do? Then we should start with expressing our gratitude to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who is supporting us in the rounds for calls and tenders, so they're going to apply for support. Of course, the foreign communities cannot build their media based only on support activities, but it's very important that we can maintain the level of Estonian language, that we can use professional editors and so forth, and so that maintaining the quality is important. And it's important to be sustainable, because this is, we need this kind of practical help as well through these calls. So I keeping fingers crossed, hoping that it will continue. We have seen different opinions that as you have to submit your project every year, because if we have good publications, then maybe they could have an easy access to funding. So this is something we need to discuss together, and it's really good that we have a platform where we can discuss all these questions. Markus, if you remember, when we had the Government Cooperation Committee, when we started to develop a global program for Estonians, and right now we are developing a media working group where all the media representatives can sit down together and discuss everything with the Estonian government as a partner, because we want to be strategic partners for Estonia, and I believe that Estonia is very much interested that on a local level all the media publications, would they be electronic or on a hard copy, would survive, and they would help to strengthen this sort of understanding of being Estonian in our different countries of residence. And this is what we do is so important as we work there as volunteers, because this gives us sort of sense of unity. So this is kind of a lengthy answer. Thank you very much. And this is now the end of the panel. Thank you, Markus. Thank you, Sirla. Thank you, Ulle, that you came to Estonia for this event and you shared your thoughts with us. And next, I will visit Anu Raua in Viljandi County in Heimtal, in Kääriku Farm, where this is an inspiration for finding your roots. And as you know, Anu Raud is a textile artist and author and strong supporter of Estonian heritage. And her textiles is all about a big, beautiful Estonian story. But let's see what Anu Raud will tell us now at the end of the year.
This Kääriku farm is a place where there was a point in time when I needed to move away from Tallinn. I felt a bit sorry because I worked at the Academy of Art and I've always loved to be in the countryside, but then I came here and new challenges and activities came about. We established the Viljandi Culture Academy Folkloristics and Applied Heritage Studies curriculum, and I've always appreciated and loved heritage because these have been made by souls who once lived. And when we go to the graveyard at the holiday of the spirits, then we can think back to all of the crafts that they made that are now in the museums and inspire us still. This warmth of home, and when I look at life in general right now, then I think what we have and what is missing. And what is missing? Friendliness, peacefulness, human warmth sometimes. We can even see evil and stoning people. This element in our lives. trust and communal spirit and warmth and helping everybody who is around you. So maybe this, and also something that we don't have much in the city and apartment buildings, that when children come, they can make a fire, watch the fire burning in the furnace. Pots are on the stove, and there's the smell of food. So the poetry of daily life, and this is countryside living. This is beautiful in itself. The holidays, the holiday food, being in a warm house, straw on the floor, Christmas tree in the corner, children playing. That's wonderful. What's important in life is to find yourself. And just recently, there was this interesting case. I was taking the train to Tallinn. Usually young people are on their phones. They don't even notice who is sitting next to them or what's outside the window. But a young man suddenly started speaking to me, and he kept talking and talking, and we had a wonderful conversation. And in the summer once, I had the fence building bee, and it turned out that the same young man had come to help build the fence, though I didn't recognize him in the beginning. And he said, you know, you are retired and you still have a wonderful life. So I wanted to ask you, how do you find yourself? And so we discussed this matter some more. I hope he has already found himself. It's important to be honest. You should do what you are meant to do, the things you are good at. And I believe that it's everybody's obligation, almost an obligation, to make use of the talent that life or God has given you as much as possible. Create or use your talent for something else. And be grateful for life and give back to life. I think we need perseverance and agility and common sense. Yes, so we need perseverance and agility. One is strength, but the other means that in every moment, every situation, be it a very difficult moment, you think about what you can do to adjust. I remember when I was young, and I started writing, and my father, who was a writer, tried to help me a little bit, looked at what I had written and said, it's okay, but now please go and cross out all the words I, as in me. You don't need the I's. And that's what I did. And I think a wonderful thing is that even in difficult situations, complicated situations, dangerous situations, turn the I, the me, into somebody else and support the someone else. It's extremely important to have 90% gratefulness and 10% be demanding, because gratefulness also means joy, because you're so happy that you have been given life and you have lived a good chunk of your life, and if you're lucky, you have more life to live. And if you cross out the I, then look at the others living beside you, an elderly person, a child, an animal, and try to help them, and you will feel lighter for it. At Christmas, when the angel came to the shepherds, and the first words were, "Fear not." And this has been stated frequently also from the heavens. Don't fear not, I am bringing you these and these messages. And again, gratefulness helps. Whatever happens, it happens. A lot has happened in life. And we all will die in the end. And sometimes people tell me, when I think how this place can live beyond my lifetime, then everybody says, oh, you are so strong, you live a long life. And I answer that even if I live a long life, I will die soon anyway, which is true. And just to make peace with life and the situation, be grateful and happy every day, every moment, in every situation that you have been given. And try to pass your life in the best way possible and help others next to you. Many say that the world has become so small. You can travel everywhere very quickly, which isn't very good for nature. It's pollution, but still. A sense of belonging and sense of community and national sense of community and belonging is very important. And I think this is the way it is, that we don't need to speak about it much because you can see everywhere that Estonians consider the fact that they're Estonian important and they know that they can come back home. There have been times when it wasn't possible to come back. Recently, I went to Toronto and I understand that some people visit Estonia even once a quarter. It's so important to have this tie to their homeland. And it's important to do things together. In 2004, we organized the Forest University in Heimtal, and in 2024, I want to organize it again. And when I proposed this idea initially, then everybody was so enthusiastic. Oh, if it's in Heimtal, we will come. It's wonderful. And we always have a focus topic. And if we focus on our heritage, ancestors, how they live their lives and their wisdom, then that would be a wonderful thing. My biggest wish is peace. Peace for you, for me, for the world. Living without war. Being without war. That is my greatest wish.
Thank you very much, Anu, for this beautiful words and wishes. And we wish her beautiful Christmas time and lots of strength and energy for her creations. You should go and see this beautiful place yourself because the camera can't show you everything. But I would like to thank you all as you've joined us here today. And I hope that you enjoyed these panel sessions. And I hope that across the world, regardless where you are, you will maintain your identity as Estonians and you will come back home one day. So now to conclude, we will have Puuluup once again. So thank you all and beautiful Christmas time to you all.
Ja siia lõpetuseks esitame teile ühe tantsu Reinlendri. Reinlendri nimi on Lambad ei joo ja võite kõik rahulikult Reinlendrit tantsida, aga kui te millegipärast näiteks ei oska samme või tunnete ennast ebakindlad, siis me õige pea näitame teile ka sammud ette, et seal on vaja teha siis 2 sammu vasakule ja 2 paremale. Ramo näitab teile kohe sellise sportliku versiooni, et kui teil on hea füüsiline vorm ja tahate seda ka teistele näidata, et siis võib teha nii nagu Ramo, 2 sammu vasakule, 2 sammu paremale, aga niimoodi hüppata umbes meeter õhku ja 3 kõrvale, eks ole. Aga on ka alternatiiv neile, kes soovivad jääda soliidseks, eks. Siis palun, kui tahate, et inimesed tõsiselt võtaksid, siis ja soovite siiski tantsida, et siis võite mind vaadata. Niimoodi ka, 2 paremale ja 2 vasakule.
Walking in the Balloon Bank, oh, me shaman, wicked man, I me give me no franc, I've been a franc and the money at all, man, I me give me no jump, oh, me shaman, wicked man, I me give me no franc, is in the wicked the best man, way yo lambadio, lambadio, sidaram siane lumbe, way yo kirila, alem number 1, way yo lambadio, lambadio, sidaram siane lumbe, way yo kirila, alem number 1. I say a witch and I get to poema, a shumi, a zama, a boomana, a dia wiki a wapen shades, a so big a girl, a two man and a walking in a Balloon Bank. Oh, me a shamai, wicked a man, I me give me no franc, I've been a franc and the money at all, man. Way yo lambadio, lambadio, sidaram siane lumbe, way yo kirila, alem number 1, way yo lambadio, lambadio, sidaram siane lumbe, way yo kirila, alem number 1. I work in a man now, we measure working a man now, woman girl, a two man and a baggy, working a man now, walking girl, you in the bashy, so me, come on back, woman, you know the man and now, way yo lambadio, sidaram siane lumbe, way yo kirila, alem number 1, way yo lambadio, sidaram siane lumbe, way yo kirila, alem number 1, way yo lambadio, sidaram siane lumbe, way yo kirila, alem number 1, way yo lambadio, sidaram siane lumbe, way yo kirila, alem number 1.